Hello everybody, Vic here with the National Pokeball League. Joining me today is my esteemed colleague, the Mr. Pokemon, a punctual Tui, and we will be bringing you the power rankings for Week 5 of the National Pokeball League. It was a washout week, with only 2 games going to a 3-0, everything else going to a 4-5-6-0. It was a violent week, it was a beatdown week, and some very interesting coaches made some wins. The rankings are sort of all over the place, so without further ado, Mono, why don't you jump in with your number 12?
Okay, I will do so, and I would like to mention this week was actually very difficult to come up with rankings for because a lot of people who we have previously ranked highly lost, and a good amount of people who were ranked low had won.
I second this
So
assertion.
that was just, very surprising week overall. But as we said, we'll jump right into it, and I'm going to go with my number 12 being Ashley of the Detroit Pincers. For once, I believe this is the first time all season Seattle is not the number 12, so congratulations, Dave. You did it. Good job, buddy. So Ashley got 6-0'd this week, and especially relatively early game, I just slapped myself in the face on some of her plays. Particularly turn 1, just staying in, going for a return on the Kieran Black with your Diggersby. Basically, in my notes, I just have turn 1, stay in on Kieran with Diggersby, a bunch of question marks and exclamation marks. So that's my thought of that. A little bit later on, she switched a Lucario into a Doublade on the incoming Sacred Sword. Now, even if he did not go for Sacred Sword, I'm really not sure what a Lucario is going to do to a Doublade. Maybe it was a special set with like Dark Pulse or something, but even something like an Earthquake is not going to do all that much, and it can just kill it right afterwards. I believe later on in the match, she went for a T-Wave with Chansey onto the opposing Kyurem. That likely had sub because it had revealed leftovers, and Trev does like to run sub-lefties Kyurem Black, so that was really not a good play at all. And then her planning was just weak. She did not bring a Jolly Charizard when Trev has a Kyurem. That's just silly, because if Kyurem's running enough speed, it can outspeed an Adamant Charizard. Just overall, Ashley just kind of shit the bed, and it showed in a 6-0 loss.
I actually disagree with a lot of things you said there because I helped her with the team building, and there was actually a lot of thought that went into the team. It just didn't show up in play. She had a decent team, and it just got shut down by the way that she played, unfortunately. But I'll cover that in a second. My number 12 are the Seattle Seadras for the 5th week in a row. Sorry, Dave. There was just nothing that really helped. There were a couple of moves that you absolutely needed. You needed low kick on Weavile. That was just had to come. If Weavile didn't have low kick, it got walled. And further, with the potential for as many stat drops as there were on San Antonio's team, competitive Milotic was a huge boon. If he dropped that, the number of times that Milotic got dropped by, I think it was Moonblasts and Defogs, it could have done some serious work if it had been running Scald, or Pump, or Ice Beam, or even a Hidden Power, or even a phasing set. Just knowing that it had doubled special attack is suddenly very scary, because Milotic is an offensive threat, a +2, most things are. That combined with the fact that Hitmonlee really didn't have a fun matchup, meaning that it had to be sacked relatively early on, and the fact that San Antonio's predictions were just on point, and there was really nothing that Seattle could do to someone who's predicting right, plus the core that San Antonio brought. So, sorry, Dave, you are still number 12. I would like to see you do better though, because I know that he's slipping into his element with his team.
Okay. For my number 11, I have Dave of the Seattle Seadras. I think Dave honestly didn't do too poorly this game. He was a little bit too gimmicky. Like normal gem, rapid spin, Hitmonlee was pretty weird. Again, that's more of a situational thing.
Well, it does get
not having
unburdened,
poison
so...
gem. Yeah, I know. Like I know that's the whole unburden thing, but usually you see it with a fake out, and the rapid spin at that point in time was kind of weird, because if you need to spin, but it's not time for you to late game sweep, it's kind of just wasted, like it was in the match. Not having low kick on Weavile, that was a problem. I guess he kind of ran into 4 move slot syndrome, like he wanted knockoff Icicle Crash, Ice Priority, and then Poison Jab for the Grand Bowl, but he honestly could have knocked off Icicle Crash. Ice Shard hit enough things hard as it is. But honestly, I think he made a couple of good plays. he did get hacks a little bit in the beginning, and that may have thrown him off a little bit, but he did make some pretty good early plays. I believe it was the Thunderous versus Nidoqueen or Thunderous versus Penguin guy, Empoleon, that's it. And he went right for the HP Ice, predicting the Nidoqueen. That was good. He made a couple of players later on. The main reason I have him at number 11, so down low, is he's still 0-5, and he still, I believe he has the worst differential in the league. Ashley might be a little bit lower, but he's still not proven to be a threat yet. And I think it's a little bit too late at this point.
Yeah, I hear you there. My number 11 is Ashley of the Detroit Pincers, and the only reason that she's above Dave is I think that there was more prep that went into her team. I did help her build this team a little bit, and listening to her thought process in what she needed to bring, the preparation was completely there, just the play was not. It was indeed a special Lucario that would absolutely have bodied the Doublade had it gotten in safely. Just sending it in straight was a terrible idea, and it was a bulky Charizard, bulky DD, Megazord, which did indeed give a huge amount of trouble to whatever his face is, Trev, but it just didn't have a chance to come in because those were Stallbreaker Kyurem and Stallbreaker Victini with Bulk, which did prevent the Scott Adamant Diggersby from getting a kill on the Kyurem early on. Basically, Trev bought the perfect storm that stopped Ashley's team, which was good for what we predicted to come, but whatever, it happened. And I mean, Kyurem. Kyurem is a monster. Kyurem is so good. The Stallbreaker set is absolutely punishing in this format. If you don't outspeed it, get an early status on it, or have an unaware user, it's just over. And that's exactly what happened this week. Kyurem came in and was Kyurem. All over the place. Rip Ashley.
Yep, you're right. That is why Kyurem Black is actually banned in several other leagues, because it is so incredibly powerful.
Kyurem and Victini should not be in league format.
Next up, number 10, I have Richard Nixon of the Chicago Sacred Fire. So, bringing Hazard stack, such as Stealth Rocks and a Suicide Lead and Galvantula and Sticky Web, when your opponent has the best defogger in the game in Latias, was probably not the best way to go about things. I can understand why he would want those hazards, but again, it was going to be very, very difficult for him to keep them both up. Granted, he was able to keep the rocks up, but obviously that didn't help him too much. I will say he did bring some pretty cool sets. The AV Crawdon for the Latias was very smart, as it allowed him to take a Draco Meteor and then knock it out with a knockoff afterwards. But overall, that just wasn't super impressed with the way he played. Granted, I do believe his opponent had a very good team matchup against him, and it was very difficult to build for him, but still, there are ways he can get past that, and he was not able to find it this week. I do have high hopes for him, though.
He's actually my number 10 as well. I thought his prep was absolutely phenomenal. There was some cool stuff on Chicago this week. The AV Crawdon I thought was a stroke of genius because it does check Lati, and I do kind of understand the hazard stack as a way to pressure Lati in, as a way to get Crawdon and all of that. If that's what he was going for. I may be giving him way too much credit, but I like Danza. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. Or Nixon, sorry, he's going by Nixon right now. Best president. But my big note is that he really didn't have anything for Hippodon outside of Crawdon, which, even though Hippo is hella defensive, Crawdon does punish it pretty hard with waterfalls and stuff like that. So losing that was pretty crippling. I get that it was necessary to take care of the Lati threat, but it was also needed for Hippo, so I wonder if there were other options about that. There was a lot of hacks, but quite frankly, Hippodon plus Assault Vest Electros, that's hard to break at the best of times, and when you've lost one of your premier wall breakers, GG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, who was his opponent?
It was Portland, so that's gonna be Togobor.
Yeah, Portland did have a very good team matchup against him, but which again he can't really deal with. But for number 9, I have Razor of the New York Matangs. So Razor actually won this week. He did very well this week. I think he played smart, he played safe, and the biggest thing was he got rid of Richard's responses to Suicune. That way Suicune could eventually set up and stall out the rest of his things, the rest of Richard's mons. The main reason why he is down low at number 9 is because I believe he's currently only 2-3. His differential is still negative, I believe. And really, it was Richard who kind of just sacked off the things that dealt with Suicune. It wasn't necessarily Razor playing super incredible threat man and getting rid of the things, but either way, he did. They were gone, and he knew that Suicune was his win condition, and he knew that once he got rid of the things that beat his win condition could just win condition.
No way. Yeah.
Your turn, Vic.
Actually, my number 9 is his opponent, the Oakland Rosa Raiders. I think that Richard and Razor actually played a very good game. I think that it was probably one of the worst matches that was played this week. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think that there was much. I think there were a lot of mistakes. There was one huge thing that Richard did was he bought a natural gift on Talonflame specifically designed to peg Staraptor, because Staraptor is a decent check to Talonflame, assuming that it's not carrying Will-O-Wisp. And Staraptor was a huge threat to Oakland, so having that check so that Raptor only got 1 kill, and it's at the cost of Talonflame, which is pretty useless in this matchup anyway, was really cool. Richard, I think, made a huge mistake in burning a Conkeldurr, because, like, I get that it was for damage over time, but Conks always carry Drain Punch, they have Guts. Burning it is just a bad idea, even if it gets chip damage, because the chip damage does not pile up when it's got Drain Punch. So I really disagree with that play. I think that was a pretty heavy choke. That said, he got an Ice Cream Cone kill. Like, the Ice Cream Cone got a kill, so I think that he's officially won the league. Frickin' Ice Cream Cone, man. But in the end, there was just no way to break through the Raikou core. Raikou Suicune Conkeldurr is a frickin' amazing core, and I'm actually working on a team MOU for it right now, because I think it's got a lot of potential. So, number 9, Oakland Rosa Raiders. You played well, you've got a good record, but this week, you just didn't show up.
Okay, can't really disagree with you there. So for my number 8, I have a very big drop. I have Cheeseboy of the Phoenix Sunkern. So this guy, I had him kind of low for a while, and then he was winning a lot, and then I was like, nah, you're still staying low. And then he kept winning and stuff, and then he had like the best differential, so I was like, okay, you can be number 1. And then for the last 2 weeks in a row, he just lost, and this week he lost to the New England Pat Rats, who I believe were one of the last in the league at the time. Yeah, so I just have a couple plays that were kind of dumb, particularly in the early game. Turn 1 Leech Seed was just not a super great play, especially on a Gliscor that has Toxic Kill Recovery that's just going to get that back. Especially when your opponent has things like Volcarona that are 4 times weak to rocks, you just go for Stealth Rocks and you get them up, and then he is forced to defog, or else he's taking 50% on a big threat to his team. Like, for example, if he had rocks up first turn, the Manaphy would have been able to kill with the Scald, and he wouldn't have had to take so much damage on his Manaphy to the point where he was almost forced to sack it off. Sacking Thundurus off to the Scizor later on in the game was his kind of, what's that called? Nail in the coffin? Yeah, let's go with that. It was not the time to set up. Scizor was not expendable, but it was his safest play to just stay in case he decided to get greedy and set up, which of course he did. And Thundurus at +2 did win him the game, and that was just not the time to set up. Overall, I think he just played very poorly. I'm not going to drop him lower than 8, because he still has a decent differential, and he's still in the playoff race, and I think he can do it as long as he picks up his game from the last previous weeks. So, yeah, that's about it on Cheeseboy.
Same boat. Cheeseboy is my number 8 as well. Because, I mean, fantastic record, kick-ass team, proved to be one of the best players in the league. But this week, like last week, he just didn't show up. I don't know what happened. His team was solid for OU, not considering the threats that the opponent brought. I really question bringing an offensive Scolipede, because it was clearly not a baton passer, because it just started bopping things and then it died. And it didn't really achieve anything. Scizor walls it, so done. There didn't seem to be any prep or consideration on Cheeseboy's part. Namely, I would say EVing the Thundurus, because Thundurus did win in the match really big time at +2. EVing it so that maybe he could set up on the Scizor, maybe so it could live to Choice Banded bullet punches after rocks, which is not difficult, because it does resist those hits. He was actually perfectly EV'd to be exactly 2-hit KO'd, which I imagine was, prep on New England's part. But what Cheeseboy didn't bring into account is that Spadef Gliscor plus Scizor had him beat. Everything else was icing. And that icing was to the tune of a 4-0 by New England over one of the best teams in the league prior to this. So Cheeseboy, pick it up, mate.
Yep, I entirely agree. For my number 7, I have the New England Pat Raps. I believe this is a big increase from previous weeks. I believe beforehand I had him around 10. But this week, although Cheeseboy did play pretty poorly, I think he actually played pretty well. The New England Pat Raps, that is. He capitalized on Cheeseboy's mistakes very well. Again, staying in with Scizor and going for a bullet punch, not switching out and risking the setup, that was very good. He took good advantage of weaker play. It seemed like he could sense the Phoenix Sunkern were having an off day, and he put his skills to the test, and he ended up on top. He also planned pretty well. For the most part, it was relatively standard, Banded Scizor, Spadef, Gliscor, things like that, but the HP Fire Rotom to take on the Ferrothorn was very, very good. That Ferrothorn could have been very annoying later on, and he found a way to deal with it. So, New England, you are number 7. I hope you can go up from there.
Rock on. My number 7 is Green Bay Palkia's. Jolt kind of sat on Green Bay a little bit. It's 5-0. And really, I can't say that Green Bay did anything wrong. They just didn't do anything, impressive either. They're just sort of middle of the pack, so I'm going to put them at number 7 just because the, decent team prep was there, some plays were made, but nothing that was in any way special in my eyes. So I'm going to have to give them number 7.
Okay, for my number 6, I have the Oakland Rose Raiders. It seemed like to me that Richard had a decent advantage over his opponent for a good amount of the time, but his really two, but his biggest mistake was sacking off the things he had for Suicune, because like I said earlier, Suicune was Richard's Razor's win condition, and as soon as the electric guy went down, as soon as the ice cream cone thing went down, names are escaping me, I think you guys know what I mean, he really had nothing to do with it. And as I was watching the match, I was thinking, okay, maybe he has some weird set on something else to deal with it, maybe like a Natural Gift SD Talonflame, but it just didn't work out. He didn't plan well enough for Suicune, I don't think. Also, something kind of weird was running Acrobatics on a Natural Gift Talonflame, meaning you have to get rid of the berry you're holding in order to successfully use Acrobatics or efficiently use Acrobatics. I'm not going to fault him for it because it didn't really hurt him as much as other things hurt him, but it's just kind of weird to me. So I'm having him at number 6 because I still think he's a good enough battler to the point where I think he has a chance to make it to the playoffs and a chance to do well. Rock on.
I would actually note that for me, Acrobatics is standard on a Natural Gift because you use a Natural Gift as a bait, so you lose your item turn 1, but I mean that's how I play it, so I don't really know how other people play it. I also don't like Talonflame as a mob. My number 6, the New England Patrats. Yeah, Cheeseboy just kind of got bodied. Cheeseboy made some definite mistakes that match, and I think that New England did a really good job, like you said, of capitalizing. They brought a team that was just standard enough. Computer, what are you doing? They brought a team that was just standard enough to be a serious issue for a draft format team that doesn't necessarily have all of the standard stuff. And really, he identified that Spadef Gliscor plus Scizor plus, filler would be Cheeseboy's downfall if he played it correctly, if he was able to deal with the Thunderous and just keep rocks up, basically. Because there's no way that that's beaten Medicham. There's no way that Medicham is beating that. There's no way that anything's beaten that. So, New England, looking good, mate.
Okay, and for my number 5, I have Michael of the Green Bay Palkias. So it's not really a secret, Michael played absolutely poorly this week. Primarily in the first couple turns. Like turn 1, losing Darmanitan to a kind of obviously Scarf Greninja. Not that it's super obvious, but you at least should have checked to make sure it was Scarfed. That was pretty dumb. That was pretty awful. Staying in on Registeel when your opponent has a Terrakion on the other side of the field, also not so smart. I can understand maybe Registeel could take one non-Life Orb close combat, but you have to scout for these things. You can't just assume something is running a certain item, stay in, and then face the consequences afterwards. You have to scout for these types of things. After that, I don't think he played super poorly, but again, those first couple of turns were just things that he really could not come back from. I have him ranked number 5 because I do believe he has a pretty good differential, and I do believe he is up there in the playoff contentions, but he's got to play better than that if he wants to have a chance.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that camp. My number 5, New York Metangs. Razor played well. Razor has suddenly appeared on the field because he was 0-3 the first few weeks, and these last 2 weeks he's gotten some pretty decent kills, some pretty decent wins on some pretty good teams. So I'm excited to see what he's doing. Basically, he brought a core that is very difficult to break. Raikou, Suicune, and Conkeldurr is a monstrous core. It was AV Raikou which just kind of stopped Oakland hard. I think that in future weeks, bringing that as Specs or Scarf or Life Orb or even Sub-CM is going to be horrifying in conjunction with Assault Vest Guts, Conk to eat status, and then just good old reliable Crocoon to finish things out. It's a monster of a core. The only note that I have that stops him from being a little bit higher in my rankings, because I'm actually really liking where he's going, is that in this particular match, Jolteon beat Raikou, and he took a bunch of useless damage and actually healed the Jolteon by firing Volt Switches like 4 times in a row. But I mean, that's really the only thing I can say to fault him. It was a pretty good win. I'm impressed by you, Razor.
All right, well, good job, Razor. You have the Vic approval. For my number 4, I have Togevar of the Portland Timbers. He was able to keep Webs off the field for the majority of the game, which was very helpful. He played Electros beautifully. Electros really did a number on his team. Its move coverage hit his entire team super effectively, I believe. The HP Ice for the Garchomp was really smart. He was able to deal with it very well. Overall, he just brought a team that Nixon could not handle with the mons he brought, and that is a huge part to League format. If you do that, you are going to win 9 times out of 10. The other 1 out of 10 accounts for hacks, but luckily Toge did not get hacks this week. He has really came back from his earlier season struggles when I believe he was 1-2. At this point, I believe he is 3-2, and he is doing much better, and I'm confident he's going into good places. I know I said that about a lot of people, but I think if Toge keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be perfectly fine for later on in the season.
Yeah, I've actually got him in the same place. Number 4, he's looking good. I just have in my notes, AV Electros is love. I have a little heart in my thing. He just played it flawlessly. I don't think I've ever seen an Electros played better than that. Admittedly, I don't play the tiers where Electros is common. I only see it on crappy OU teams. But I think it was a very good mon. That plus Hippodon, hello there. There's just nothing. That plus Hippodon plus Lahi, which kind of have similar checks, and so if you can take out the checks, those 3 just sort of sit there and are fat. And fat things don't go over well when you have to bring an Assault Vest Prod on. It's just not going to end well. So, Portland looking good. Hopefully we did not just give you commentator's curse, because I see this team ending up in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something else I want to mention. When you force your opponent to run a certain set, that's how you know you're doing good with team building. Alright, so number 3, I have Dallas Boy of the San Antonio Swampbirds. This week, Dallas came back in absolute full force. He's in the middle of a beautiful comeback. He played very well versus Dave, who, in my opinion, did give a pretty good fight. He planned well. His Cabalion set was perfect. I believe it was Stone Edge, Volt Switch, and 2 other moves that helped. I'm not going to go back and check, but it worked out perfectly for him. AV Nidoqueen was great in order to take on the Thunderous. Really, it was just good old classic Dallas. He planned well, played well, and he got a win as a result.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually my number 3 as well. We're agreeing a lot this week. I'm worried. No, he played solidly. It was a good-looking match. And really, San Antonio is one of the forces to be reckoned with here. They are scary. The race is tight here. We got 3 teams who are 4-1, so it really came down to who do I think played the better match, and I really think that Seattle was probably the weakest opponent for those 3 players, so that's the only reason that San Antonio is number 3 rather than 2 or 1. It's so close to a 3-way tie for first hit this week. These guys played really well, but yeah, Dallas like, welcome back, buddy. You're looking really hot.
Mm-hmm. You're also playing very well, Dallas. Anyway.
Shut up!
Anyway. So for number 2, I have Jolt of the Toronto Star Raptors. Honestly, there isn't too much to go over. Jolt, as he has been doing all season, planned to perfection, and he just played solid. Of course, his opponent did make a couple mistakes, but like I've said about some other people, he capitalized on them perfectly. And the mistakes his opponent made would not have been mistakes had he not brought the sets he brought. For example, like I said earlier, if that were not a Scarf Greninja, if that were any other set of Greninja, the Darmanitan had every right to stay, and if his Registeel had counter and his Terrakion was not Life Orbed, the Registeel would have lived and it would have killed the Terrakion instead. But because of what he did, and because of the advantages he made for himself, he was able to pull out a victory.
Right on, right on. My number 2 is Atlanta, Trev. I mean, this team's great. This team is scary, this team is well played, this team is incredibly balanced. Well, I would say incredibly overbalanced. But the only reason that he's number 2 is while he did pull off a pretty brutal 6-0, Ash just kind of stood and took it. I don't think that Ashley really put up the fight that she could have, especially with the team that I know that she had. So, you know, amazing play by Trev, and like some enterprising sets that were really just horrifying. But, and you know, he brought this amazing core in Kyurem, Doublade, Victini, and Sylveon support. Like, that's a horrifying core when your core is 2 of the biggest offensive threats in the league, and then 2 mons that are incredible passive attackers. But that core just doesn't die, then hot damn, you need a ton of priority to break that, and that just doesn't exist in Ash's team. So, Trev looking good, pretty much a shoo-in playoffs in my opinion.
I totally agree with you, Vic. For my number 1, probably not a surprise, I have Trevin and Forrest of the Atlanta Braviaries. It's really hard to argue with the person who not only has the roster that he has, but the person who has the highest differential in the entire league by quite a decent margin. This week, he absolutely slaughtered Ashley. Granted, again, Ashley just kind of let it happen, but when it's a 6-0 is not an easy feat. Like, you really have to do a little bit of extra work to make sure none of your Pokemon go down. He's using his team to absolute perfection. He's bringing the exact right sets. He can show that even though he's done crazy things in the past, like Trick, Toxic, or Victini, he can run relatively standard sets and make them successful. He makes smart, calculated doubles. For example, switching Serperior in on a Moongift going for Spore, and then doubling out into, I believe it was, doesn't matter really, switching out into something else and then a predicted Sludge Bomb. That just went over very well for him. He's, like I said in previous weeks, he's just running a train through everyone, and other than Jolt, he has yet to lose. So overall, he is my favorite to win it all, and he is going to be this week's number 1.
Alright, no, I mean, you can't argue with that logic. The only reason that I have Jolt of the Toronto Star Raptors at number 1 is because I just...
It's because you're biased.
Believe it or not, it's not. I actually, I actually had a long, hard discussion with him about this, and basically we went through why I think that he was just a little bit better than Atlanta, and that's because I think he had a harder opponent, and I think that has to be taken into account. Yes, it was a closer match. It was only a 5-0, not a 6-0. But, you know, actually the only reason that it was a 5-0 was because of hacks, a lot of hacks, rather than a 6-0. So really, I just think that Toronto, played a slightly better game. I think the Scarf Greninja is horrifying. Scarf Modest Greninja is basically as good as Protean if you don't mind getting locked into a move. Like, as far as league format goes. There were a couple of perfect predictions. At turn 15, there was something in on a Greninja, there was something in on Whimsicott, and basically he doubled through Greninja into Mega Aerodactyl, which absolutely bodies Whimsicott, and just took care of that, which Whimsicott was a threat. Specs Whimsicott did a lot of damage to his team, to Jolt's team. The only the only reason that it was a 5-0 was actually because of the hacks on Gastrodon. The turn that the Gastrodon killed the Mew, it took a critical hit from Psychic and actually got a Scald Burn. I'd like to point out that in all of the practice matches that Jolt played, all 3 of them, that was the first Scald Burn that Gastrodon got, and because of Synchronize, it went down because it took about 70% of damage that turn, when it should have taken about 40. So just kind of a funny thing. And it was a very hacksy match, but actually it did show that most of the hacks did not happen on in Jolt's favor. So I'm just gonna have to give Jolt number 1. I think he did really well. Yeah, and that's it for the week, guys. This is the National Pokeball League's power rankings for week 5. We're almost halfway there, guys. So, Mono, do you have any closing remarks before I sign this one off?
Today I bought a fish and I named him Ass Eater.
Congratulations, I hope that you and your little Basculin are very, very happy. I have got the cactus sitting on my shelf named Mora. I don't know why Mora. Okay, so with that personal aside out of the way, we are Vic and Monotooi for the National Pokeball League, and we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.